What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe as you tune into the channel. You check out the content. And with that being said, man, I want to react to some recent statements that Stephen A. Smith made about Chris Paul's retirement, right? And not that I really disagree with Stephen A. Smith's his take on Chris Paul's retirement and or do I disagree with like how they treated Chris Paul, right? Well, I do think that it was wrong, but my thing, and I have made other videos about Chris Paul and his retirement, and I think that people like the way we look at it, I think is wrong. We're looking at it from the wrong perspective, in my opinion. Right? I think that professional athletes or any entertainer, they should put themselves in a position where as though they can control their own legacy and their own image, right? And a lot of times athletes and entertainers, they think that just because they perform well on court or they perform well in like whatever, that these teams are going to be loyal to them, right? And that's not always the case. And so when it comes to your legacy, that's your responsibility to put yourself in a put yourself in the light that you want to be portrayed in, and not give these these agencies and these NBA teams or whoever you work for the opportunity to have a negative effect on your legacy. And so I'm going to play the audio from what Stephen A. Smith had to say, and I'm gonna just point out some few things because if you look at it the wrong way, then you set yourself up to be a victim, just like Chris Paul. So, with that being said, I'm gonna play what Stephen A. Smith said about what the way that this team treated Chris Paul. Now it's taking its time. Had it all set up. Hold on, let me go out and come back in. Yeah, so until this thing is buffering right now, but until it comes up, my thing is, as a professional athlete, and I have some videos that I'm gonna make about LeBron James, right? And so, because people think that I'm not a LeBron James fan, but I just think that LeBron James and a lot of these guys in the media these days, or professional athletes, put themselves in a position where these teams can take advantage of them.
Actually, I'll come to you first. Do you have a problem with how CP3's career ended?
Yeah, I do. And, I've got a lot of friends within the Clippers organization. So I'm reluctant to be harsh, but I can't help it. It's disgraceful what they did to CP3. It's not that they let him go. It's not this lie, this mutual parting of the ways. Anybody believe in that crap? It's not about that. To me, Wendy, Big Perk, y'all have followed this story as well. It's that you let him go when you were in Atlanta. You could have let him go a week earlier when he was in LA. You could have let him go after you came off the road trip. When he was sent home, think about the news stories that came out. It was that he was sent home. How disrespectful can you be? Now, I understand that Chris Paul, in some people's eyes, was a headache. And reportedly, he wasn't speaking with Coach Ty Lue for a period of time before that. No, I don't want to hear all of that because, again, that I understand. He got to go home. He got to go. Ain't nobody saying he should have finished the season or anything like that. If things weren't working out, it wasn't working out. But when you consider what this man has done for the Clippers organization throughout its history, returning them to relevancy, okay? When you consider the great career that he had, to send him home as if he's some cat that got in trouble in the streets and we don't want any association with him and stuff like that, to make it look like that is egregious. And I'm going to remind everybody, this is who we're talking about when we're talking about Chris Paul, the point guard for 21 seasons. Second all-time in career assists, second all-time in career steals, sixth all-time in assists per game, tied for 10th all time in steals, averaged 20 and 8 in his postseason career over 15 seasons. 21.8 points per game in his one finals appearance against the Milwaukee Bucks when Giannis put a 50 buck on them. Shoot 55% from the field, 52% from three-point range. 75th anniversary team, 12-time All-Star, 11-time All-NBA selection, 9-time All-Defensive Team player, Rookie of the Year, 6 times he led the league in steals, twice as many as anybody in NBA history, 5-time assist leader, 2 Olympic gold medals, all right? And you look at all of that.
All right, so I'm gonna pause it right there. And so you heard all of Chris Paul's accolades and all of his accomplishments and his stats and stuff like that, right? Obviously, that stuff don't matter to them, right? And so if you are trying to use that, if Chris Paul is trying to use that as leverage in order to be treated fair, then it didn't work, right? So you set yourself up, like I said, especially when players say, "Well, I was loyal to your organization," but the thing is, you have to think and look at it from the way that they look at it. Now, and I said this in other videos. Obviously, the Clipper organization don't feel like anything that Chris Paul did throughout his career, like it, he did what he did. It don't really benefit them because if you remember, Chris Paul played for, I think he played for at least 5 or 6 teams during his career. So his connection is really to no team, and his fan base is divided between like 5 or 6 different teams. So it wouldn't have been like any type of backlash or anything for the Clippers if they had to did what they did to Chris Paul, right? They wasn't gonna. You can complain and cry and whine about what they did to Chris Paul, but they knew that they wasn't going to face any backlash for what they was doing to Chris Paul, right? So you can't use the fact that you've been in the league for 20 years and you had all these stats and all this other stuff when they are not using that same metric. They're not using that. But what you have to do is to consider your legacy, not just from the very beginning, not just once you have all these accomplishments, right? You got to consider your legacy and take charge of your own legacy. And how you do that is you with your play on the court, right? You do that with like your interactions with your teammates and your peers. Because a lot of times, like superstar basketball players, sometimes they don't have good relationships with their peers. They don't have good relationship with the coaches. But you got to consider all that because people who you step on the way up are going to be the same people that you see on your way down, and those are the people who are going to really look forward to you. They're going to look forward to your downfall. So you have to consider that too from the very beginning. And a lot of people say that Chris Paul is somebody who's a headache to get along with. You gotta be able to you want to be treated fair, but you don't want to be to the point where as though you are somebody who don't get along with anybody, who's a nuisance. So you have players who said Chris Paul was a nuisance, and you have people in management and coach who said that Chris Paul was a nuisance. So it was obvious that people was waiting until Chris Paul fell off in his play, that they wanted to treat him like that. And so a lot of athletes go through that, especially a lot of the really good athletes nowadays you see going through stuff like that. I remember Terrell Owens when he played for Philly. Well, he played for a couple different teams, but they couldn't wait for Terrell Owens to be older and couldn't perform like he used to, so they can just treat him any kind of way. But that all comes from how you act while you are a professional while you're a professional. And I like to use the other guy. What's the guy? Larry Fitzgerald played for. Who did he play for? Larry Fitzgerald played for St. Louis Cardinals for his whole career, right? He was professional the whole way through, and so that's how you control your legacy, right? You just can't be somebody who is like And if you want to be controversial and you don't really care about like how people see you and your legacy and stuff like that, then you can act like that. But you can't be surprised when people, they don't care about your stats. People care about like how you relate to them when you have the power and you have the leverage, because as a player, you won't always have the leverage, right? And so you gotta have some forethought when you're dealing with people. And that's, you can spew out all the accomplishments of Chris Paul and all this other stuff, man. But it was just obvious that they was waiting for Chris Paul to age out so they can treat him and they can get some get back on him. If Chris Paul had been loyal to one organization, in my opinion, and I think that this organization, the Clippers, would not have been able to treat Chris Paul like that. And I say because they have to consider like the fan base and the long-term ramifications of treating a superstar basketball player like that. If all those accomplishments that Stephen A. Smith just named had a came under that Clippers banner, right? Then because it's not to their benefit to dog Chris Paul out like that. They're gonna want to bring Chris Paul back for like player appreciation, and they're gonna want to bring him back so they can hang a banner. They're gonna want to bring him back so they can retire his number. But they don't, because his fan base was fractured, they don't have to worry about stuff like that. And so they can just, all right, he played for the league, he played for Phoenix, he played for the Clippers, he played for the Spurs, he played for OKC, and I'm sure he played for other teams. So it don't really matter to any of those teams how Chris Paul get treated. It don't really matter to any of the fan base how he get treated, because none of those teams really can benefit or going to benefit from like bringing him back. Whereas though, if you look at Allen Iverson, like Allen Iverson played the bulk of his career in Philly. And from time to time, Philly, because of the appreciation and the love that that fan base had for him, they bring him back, right? And the organization benefits from that, having him come back, and that's more money in their pocket. But what organization is going to bring him back when you don't have that connection to their fan base? Or if you do, you have a connection with 5 other fan bases, so it's you got to have some foresight in the way you move around the NBA. And obviously all your accolades and all your stats and stuff really don't matter. And number one is how you treat people. And then it's number 2, I think it's developing a connection with that fan base. And when you're moving around from team to team, you really can't develop a connection with that fan base. So that's my take on it. I think that players should really think about it. Especially the franchise basketball players, stay in one place, build. Like Steph Curry would never get treated like this by Golden State. And so it is what it is. That's my take on it. Make sure to like and subscribe. Don't forget to leave a comment. And with that being said, man, I'm gonna check y'all out in the next video. Peace.